We have right here the 2023 Ford Everest. Let's do a review. The Ford Everest received a new generation together with the Ranger, which it's based on this year. Launched earlier this year, we already reviewed the 2023 Ford Everest Sport and Ranger Wildtrak 4x4. Be sure to check them out too. Anyway, let's get to the review. This one we have is the current top-of-the-line 2023 Ford Everest Titanium Plus 4x4 Turbo, and it's priced at 2,495,000 Philippine pesos. Now looking at the Everest exterior, we get a tougher, more rugged, and at the same time more sophisticated exterior. Since this is the top variant, we get Matrix full LED headlights with cornering lights and LED fog lights. We also get the very recognizable Ford Signature C-clamp LED daytime running lights. The side profile of the Everest still looks similar to the previous generation, but that's not a bad thing. Since this is the Titanium Plus, we do get a very stylish set of 20-inch two-tone alloy wheels wrapped in Goodyear Wrangler Territory highway tires. Other things we can see here on the side are a functional vent with a bi-turbo name and titanium badge on the door. Over at the back, this is one of our favorite parts of the Everest. It looks very sleek, and we love the portion that connects the taillights with the Everest name on it. The taillights are all LED except for the turn signals, which should already be LED as well in our opinion. We also have rear fog lights on the bumper. Once you open the power tailgate, it reveals enough space for everyday items as you can see here with the third row seats up. Fold them down electronically and you get twice or triple the amount of space. We also have underfloor storage. Now we're inside the top-of-the-line Ford Everest, and as you can see, just like in the Ranger that I showed you last week, we have a more modern, more straight-lined interior. So before we had some curves, now it's all straight lines. And of course, as I mentioned as well in the Ranger, materials are both an upgrade and a downgrade. So here in the dashboard, we have more hard touch plastic compared to before. Everything on top is hard touch plastic. Then here, on the portion that's closer to you is soft touch. But still, it's pretty good, and the materials all feel very solid. And here in the door panels, we have really nice leather on top and lots of soft touch materials, which is an upgrade compared to before. What I am noticing is that the interior is a bit monotone, so we don't have much color in here except for the chrome and gray pieces, but the stitching is all black on the door, on the steering wheel, on the dashboard, so that looks kind of boring if I'm being honest. So I wish that maybe at least they should have placed white stitching in here. And speaking of the steering wheel, so we have the same steering wheel as the Ranger. It's leather wrap, and again the black stitching I told you, and just like what I mentioned there as well, it's now telescopic as well, so that's really good because it helps give you a better driving position. And then of course we have our adaptive cruise control, speed limiter, and audio controls on the left, and our controls for the screen on the right for the instrument cluster. Then for the horn, just your typical Ford Everest horn, very nice and very meaty sound. Then speaking of instrument cluster, we have a fully digital instrument cluster for this variant of the Everest. So this shows us lots of useful information about the vehicle. So we have our trip computer, of course. Right now it has your seatbelt warning, and what I am noticing is that it appears that we cannot use it if our seatbelt is not on. So let's just put that on. There we go. So now it's showing our fuel economy. We have our off-road view and other settings and everything about the audio system, phone, yeah. And also another thing that I'm noticing is that we have some really small temperature gauges and fuel gauge. So sometimes I actually forget that they're there. So when I want to see the fuel, I actually get surprised that the fuel is lower than I expected it to be. So it's really tiny. It's around this size. So that's too small. I think it should be bigger. Then moving towards the center, we have the center of attraction here in the center. Our 12-inch touchscreen infotainment system. So it's a portrait touchscreen like in the Ranger as well. All variants get the portrait touchscreen, but this one gets it in 12 inches for both titanium variants. And of course, it's very responsive. It uses Ford's new Sync 4A operating system. And then we have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as well. You can see we have Apple CarPlay right here, and of course, looks really good. And you can even change the size of the CarPlay. Another really good thing. Then down here we have our climate controls, which is integrated into the touchscreen, which I'm not really a fan of. I still prefer physical buttons like what we have here for the temperature and our fan speed, as well as our recirculation. Then while most of the things about the screen are good, what I am noticing is that there is some stuff that could still be improved, perhaps an update to the system, because there are times that the music cuts off. It gets a bit there's a lot of static when you play music, when you stream music, and when you listen to the directions from Waze. Then also we have our 360 cam over there. And what I'm noticing here is that we have some huge borders on the side of the screen, on the side of the camera screen display, so it looks kinda like wasted space. So I think they should still improve that, though this is similar to what you'll find in a Ford F-150 360 camera as well. Then going back to the climate controls, again, they're here in the screen, so you can adjust them here, or you can adjust them through the knobs that I mentioned earlier as well. Then of course I still prefer using the knobs, it's a lot easier, and sometimes it does get a bit confusing to find some of the things that you need to use. So still, again, all controls should be buttons and knobs in my opinion. Then moving down, we have our wireless phone charger, 2 USB ports, one USB-A, one USB-C, very similar to what you'd find the Ranger. Then of course our French fry holder. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to buy French fries and eat it here, but I hope I get to use that later when we go back to Manila. Then here, this is what sets this apart from the Ranger as well. So we have our electronic gear shifter. So this is very nice actually. So just PR and D. And while I really like this, it does feel a bit too light. So for example, you're in drive, you'd like to go to reverse, you'll end up going to park most likely because of how much resistance this does not have. Another really cool thing about this is that, for example, you're in drive and then you forget to put the car in park and you turn off the engine. So when you turn it off, let's do that, you can see that the shifter actually goes back to park on its own. So that's really, really nice. So let's just start it again. Okay, so now we have our electronic parking brake over here. We have auto hold function, but it's in the screen, so that's another thing. It is a bit hard to access, so you will have to press the car icon over here, the Everest icon, then driver assistance, then auto hold. But still, it's okay. The auto hold works really well. So, and I actually like it on all the time, so that's okay. Then we have here our 2 cup holders, our 4-wheel drive modes, our drive modes. So we have normal, we have eco, tow, slippery, mud and ruts, and sand modes. So let's just put it back to normal. There we go. We also have our park assist button here. We also have our stability control off and our button to show the camera and our off-road stuff over here. Then moving here, we have a really nice center armrest, really wide, with a very nice amount of storage underneath. Then for the seats, we have really nice seats over here. They're nice. They're wrapped in a very nice leather. We have 2 different kinds of leather actually. We have here, it's textured. Then we have a really smooth one over here with some really nice stitching pattern. And like I mentioned earlier, it would have been better if we had some white stitching, but this is okay, and it supports you really well. They're power adjustable, both front seats, both have lumbar support and lots of adjustment, which is really nice. And also, if you notice up there, we have a really nice panoramic sunroof, which makes this place look even bigger than it already is. I also want to add that we now have cup holders on the dashboard, so right there, so we can put our drink over there. There we go. And also we have this storage area over here. Although I did notice that sometimes it doesn't open, so there we go. So it didn't open, so you actually have to force it open. Now we're at the back, and what you'll notice is that we have lots of space back here. Then that's one thing they really improved with this generation of the Everest, because the vehicle is now larger than before. So as you can see, leg room is really good, foot room, headroom, very good despite the panoramic sunroof, although I have about 2 inches here, so that is still good. Then I have the seat set to my driving position. I'm around 5 feet and 7 inches, so again, excellent. Then materials are still the same back here. We have really nice soft touch leather on top of the door panel, some leather here, and our leather armrest as well. And also, just like the previous generation Ford Everest, we still have our lock and unlock buttons for the rear passengers up here. Then down here in the center, we have our aircon controls, 2 USB ports again, USB A and C just like in front, and our household power outlet where we can charge our laptop or, well, plug in whatever really. Then this space here looks like it could have been aircon vents, but we do have those up here on the ceiling. We also have some really nice lights over there. Again, our panoramic sunroof, and what is missing here are handles. So if you get the 4x4 Everest, we don't get any handles back here, unfortunately, although I think they still could have placed them over here. Then for the seats themselves, they do feel a bit flat, although they are really comfortable because they're nice and soft, and we still have the same kind of leather that we have in front. Then we also have this center armrest right here, nice and high, so you won't have to really go low. Then we also have our pop-out cup holders right here, which are a decent size. So I guess now we can check out the third row. Okay, so now we're here at the third row of the Everest. As you can see, for someone my height, this is a bit tight. So you can see my leg room, my legs are sticking to the front seat. Then my head is also sticking to the ceiling, especially if I was seated here in the slightly in the middle maybe. But of course, these seats are only for 2 people. Then what's good here is that my feet can actually go under the second row seat, so that's actually really nice. And we can also move these seats forward, so if ever the people here in front are nice enough, they can give you more space. And there's really not much back here, so the seats are comfortable. That's really nice. Then we have one cup holder on each side and some storage, so that's pretty much it here, plus the 2 aircon vents as well in the seating. Also, I'd like to add that we have a really nicely sized window here, so the third row seat doesn't feel claustrophobic at all. And of course, getting out of here is also very easy thanks to the way Ford has designed these seats. So you just have to pull that up and push the seat forward, and you have lots of space to get out. So now we're driving the Everest Titanium 4x4, and again, like in the Ranger, I already drove this during the recent Ford Media Drive. So that was the Ranger in Everest going to Mapanueto Lake in Zambales from here in Clark, where we are right now. In fact, I actually drove this exact Everest, so I'm driving the exact same car right now, so this should all be familiar to me by now. So while we're still making our way out of this place onto the road, let's talk about what's under the hood. So this is powered by a 2-liter EcoBlue bi-turbo diesel engine, and it produces 213 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque paired to a 10-speed automatic transmission, just like the previous generation Titanium. And while it's still the same powertrain, it actually feels a lot different compared to before, because Ford did a lot to improve how this performs. So before we talk about acceleration, let's talk about ride quality, because we're currently driving on this dirt road, not so bumpy, but it is bumpy. And as you can see, the Everest is really smooth. We're going really slow, but still, if it's a bumpy road, it's a bumpy road. And yeah, the suspension absorbs the bumps really well. It's really good how Ford has tuned the suspension of this, just like before. And compared to before, they made it a bit stiffer actually, because the old one, I'm also very familiar with that, when you take bumps like these, it actually bounces a lot, so that was really annoying. It just felt weird, and this time they made it a bit stiffer. It's still really smooth, but really Ford has one of the best tuning for the suspension of their SUVs among all the models in the segment. So this is something like Nissan Terra level. And now we're gonna merge onto the highway, so let's see how this is. So let's go. So really quick. Something that's really good about this SUV. So another great thing about this is how smooth it accelerates now. Before, the transmission had the tendency to do some gear hunting. Now Ford has eliminated that, thankfully. It's a really smooth drive now. Also, with the really smooth shifting is the really good power delivery, because you can feel all that 213 horsepower, all that 500 Newton meters of torque come in. It really brings this SUV into life. And when it comes to handling, it's another really good thing about this, because this handles really well, of course. We have very minimal body roll, and steering is really light. Well, that's a trademark of the Everest ever since, even the Ranger. But this time, even if it's still really light, Ford has also improved it. They made it a bit heavier, so they added a little bit more weight, because people are complaining that it's too light. So now they fixed that. It feels a lot more responsive now. It feels a lot better as well. Also, it's very responsive, so as you can see, little inputs, you can really feel them right away. Then going back to the ride quality, we're on somewhat of a bumpier road right now, and still the Everest absorbs the bumps really well, so you won't really feel bad at all. It's not stiff at all. It's really far from what you'd get in a Toyota Fortuner or Montero Sport. And also, it's still better than a Nissan Terra. Another huge improvement that Ford has done to this generation Everest is the NVH insulation. Before, The engine was really loud. It was really good in terms of road noise, and still is right now, but it's a lot more improved as well. It's really quiet on the highway. Then vibrations are non-existent in this SUV. So let's do another quick acceleration so that you can hear how quiet this actually is. So it's really quiet. I mean, you can hear the engine, of course, it's a diesel, but for a diesel, it's really quiet. And also, the engine sounds really good. Then when it comes to visibility, it's also really good here because this generation is a bit more boxy compared to before, so it actually translates to better visibility as well, usually. So we have a really nicely sized windshield, nicely sized windows, and just like the previous generation, we still have really nicely sized, really big side mirrors. And of course, this has blind spot monitoring, so it really helps when you have to change lanes on the highway. Overall, I have to say that the Everest is definitely the best driving SUV you can get, the best driving model you can get in the segment. So whether you get this bi-turbo version or even the single turbo, which we tested before. By the way, if you haven't seen a review on that, be sure to check it out. The link is up here or in the description of this video. That's the Everest Sport, by the way, and still really good. And when it comes to fuel economy, that's another thing that actually improved, because in the city we can do about 12 kilometers per liter. That's in light conditions. Then on the highway we can reach as much as 18 to 19 kilometers per liter, which is really good. So of course, to end this video, I have to say that the Ford Everest is definitely one of the best choices, if not the best choice to go with in the segment if you're looking for an SUV. Drives really well, it's full of tech, it's very modern, it looks really good, it stands out really well, and of course, it gives you a lot of value for your money. And of course, just like previous generations of the Ranger and Everest, they always start something in the segment, so that's another thing. So this has everything new for the segment, it has everything you need, it has everything you want. It's a complete package.